Wow, what a beautiful way to start off a Monday.
Man, you were a quick trigger this morning.
I was bummed that I was a little late. 9:02.
Well, 9:02. I just looked like 30 seconds, not even 30 seconds before you just buzzed me in, and it said you were offline, and then I went to a different screen, and there you are.
I know.
Man,
I came on. I felt like I was slacking, man.
Yeah, it's all right, man. It's Monday morning. Everybody else is slacking on Monday.
Yeah, we haven't seen the sun in about 3 weeks.
God, dude, it is. I was just commenting on that with somebody's Training Peaks. No, I was actually I was doing some analysis this morning, and this fella from California decided he had the nerve to send me a video of him swimming in an outdoor pool.
Ooh, did he?
Yeah, it got me going. But hey, at least some people get to enjoy the outside weather. But yeah, in Nashville we haven't seen the sun in I don't know how long. Hey, it is what it is. It's allegedly we're supposed to see some sunshine later this afternoon, but I'm not convinced that we're going to. But it's not raining, so I guess that we should take that as a positive.
Yeah. It's not raining yet. I guess it might not rain, huh? But
it's not supposed to rain today, I don't think so.
I'm not sold. My whole week looks like rain on my.
Well, then never
app.
mind. Maybe I'm.
No, you're right. You use underground. Underground.
Yes, Wonderground is my go-to for correct weather, and I'm going to tell you, it's pretty much always. It's not always because it's the weather. I mean, gosh, what a life to be a weatherman.
Or woman.
Or a woman, sure.
Meteorologist.
You can just be wrong all the time. And nobody cares.
Nobody cares.
No, but I was actually thinking about this. It's funny you mentioned that the other day. Oh, but first and foremost, welcome aboard. The Monday train of the Crushing Iron Triathlon podcast. Episode 243.
You got it, buddy.
We have because we rarely ever talk about data, but obviously people love data. We love our devices, but so many other times within conversations with athletes, or you read Facebook posts about devices, people readily admit how inaccurate or inconsistent said devices almost always are. Either the power's dropping, or the power's wrong, or power shows up different than it does in Training Peaks. Yet we are obsessed with using it as the basis of all of your analysis. The same goes for your GPS, wrist unit, whether you're on the treadmill, whether you're outside, whether you're in, lots of tree coverage, and is a GPS right, or my moving time shows them a different time, and my Garmin Connect's different than what my Training Peak says. And so you, athletes, almost on the daily, admit that their devices and the data are always skewed one way or the other, and sometimes they vary, and even their consistency. Because we've always said this about power meters, and I believe this is that almost all power meters are going to read differently, whether they're pedal based, hub based, crank based, whatever. They're always going to read differently, as long as they just read differently the same every single time. As long as their inconsistencies are totally 100% consistent. If they're 3% off what your normal power is, as long as it's always 3% off, all things are gold. But it's just funny how so many athletes are obsessed with the data, but then every other day they basically just admit that it's all somewhat jumbled for the most part. And you have to trim a lot of it away because there's so many inaccuracies with uploads and formats and platforms that you use in devices. But they still swear by it. And I was like, that's like the weatherman, being a meteorologist. We admit basically every single day of our life that the weatherman or woman is just totally wrong, or they're smoking crack. Yet, when we looked at playing things, what do? We look at the weather, and we're like, oh, well, I can't do that. It's supposed to rain. Wait a minute. They've been wrong for the last 3.5 weeks, but I'm going to basically plan my weekend around this. And there's just a lot of similarities.
Yeah, when I used to work in TV, weather, it was the one lowest common denominator. So, like, if there was any rumblings of potential possibilities of any kind of disruptive weather, it was like our lead story. And seriously, that's how they looked at it. They're like, oh, we've got weather. Okay. And then everybody would sort of relax.
We've got weather.
Yeah. And then everybody would kind of relax. Like, reporters would be like, oh, I guess I'm going to be, going live from Shoney's where the water's flooding over the trench or whatever onto the road. Look behind me. You can see it's raining. And that becomes the whole newscast. That's sort of the bread and butter of local TV. That's why you see these ridiculous, and then the greatest are like, we're out here, we're waiting for it to start raining. I mean, that's what drove it, but yeah,
it drives it, man. It's like there's a whole channel dedicated to it.
Yeah, if there was anything like that going on, the ratings would be higher. I mean, everyone would take a sigh of relief because we really wouldn't have to work at putting news together. We would just go stand in the elements.
Yeah, it is.
And ask people, what do you think of this rain?
Exactly. What do you think of this rain come down? Well, it's like that. I mean, it's, if you live anywhere in the South, like, you know that if it's forecasted, again, which is like, I'm going to say 30% accurate at best, if it's forecasted to, like, maybe snow, schools are off. Schools are in late. Schools are a half day. It's just insane the amount of, like, trust and faith. And I'm sure there's a meteorologist listening to us right now, at least for the next 30 seconds before they delete it and leave us a bad comment.
No, they know.
It's just a total joke. I mean,
it's getting like that in the north now. All my buddies had 12 snow days, and I don't even think it snowed half of them.
Everybody's getting soft. We're all getting soft. But it's just, I just think it's funny, and it's just kind of it's an analogy that I think is, we can apply to, like, so many other phases of our life where we know that it's just like, nothing is concrete, yet our reaction is based around the assumption, like, just how reactionary we always are to so many things, the good and bad, and how we, like, commonly, especially, like, just going back to, like, the data conversation, like every other day this week you've told me how this data is off, yet now you think it's like the end all be all gospel of training philosophy. There's just so many good takeaways, but I'll quit, banging on the weather. And I do have to say quickly, my balls got absolutely just trashed against the Kentucky Wildcats on Saturday.
Oh, your balls!
I have quite a few athletes in Kentucky. They're obviously UK fans, which nobody's perfect, and they beat us down. It was a rough. I didn't get to watch much of it, but there wasn't much to watch. But I think, hey, I would have loved to have won and seen our team win, but we needed it. We just can't. We usually play. Yeah, we needed it, and they out-hustled us. Yeah, they out-hustled us. They outworked us. They were way more physical than we're a naturally physical team. But I think when you play against anybody who is really, really athletic and they choose to be physical, then it's just a whole different ball game. And Kentucky, I think, is a little more athletic than we are. And so we needed it. We got our butt kicked in. I think we all need our butt kicked every once in a while. Yeah,
it's better to would you rather have your best run a month before the race or on the race day?
Well, I just think that's true. I think, like you said,
I told one of our Kentucky fans, I said, I hope you guys aren't peaking too early.
A lot of people do peak too early.
It's a long year.
It is.
Same with our season.
It's just nice to be reminded that you can't every day if you're playing a totally different opponent. And that goes for training too. Like, you can't just go out every single day and do things the same in terms of preparation and attitude and approach, because the conditions might be different. You might be more fatigued. There's so many things could be 100% totally different. But if you go in, it's funny because we always kind of lead into this, but I had a lot of athletes that kind of commented on some stuff this weekend that was like, I just totally didn't expect this, and I just didn't prepare very well, or I didn't feel very well, or I thought and it's just like, dude, like, you can't, you blink, or you take something for granted, or you think you can just kind of get by, and you end up getting your training day absolutely handed to you, and you lose that opportunity. And it's not necessarily a lost opportunity if you learn from it and don't do it again. But
Like, what do you mean exactly?
like people is like underfueling,
Oh,
not
okay.
getting enough sleep, taking a like that. That's usually what it is. This is total underfueling. I thought I could get by today with X, Y, and Z. Or you know what? I didn't think that last night's visit to the state fair where I had fried chicken and beer was really going to affect my long run that much this morning. So I just had some coffee and then went out for a run. Yeah, we all know how that ended up. Not very good. But so it's just like it's little things that I think sometimes when you get into, and it's a common for every athlete, the one that's super consistent or the one that's not consistent. The consistent athlete thinks they're just in kind of such of a groove that they just kind of they're on like cruise control in a bad way, to where they're just doing the work, they're doing everything right, and then if something that doesn't fall into that like normal consistent routine pattern like rears its head, whoa, then they either address it, which is what you're supposed to do, or they just kind of continue on autopilot, and then they get snuck up with weather or illness or a really bad session where they just don't prepare very well, or they just kind of assume, well, things have been going so great, I thought this would be just another one, and then they get bit or they have a bad training day, which is common. Like, you're all going to have bad training days, but there's this mental approach that you always kind of need to be almost like not hyper vigilant, but you need to have a sense about you that is, I think, very honest, an honest conversation with yourself on every workout. And we talk about this a lot. It's just how you shouldn't have these giant expectations for workouts because, like the weather, they're usually wrong. You think it's gonna rain today, so you adjust accordingly. You think it's gonna be a crappy day, and what happens? It was like sunny and 70, and you just missed an opportunity. Or you thought it was gonna be a sunny training day, and what happens? Storms, doom and gloom, horrible day. And I think there's a lot to be said for the athlete who wakes up and basically treats just the day as a day and doesn't judge or expect based on the previous 3 weeks, or it doesn't look at it also and think, you know what, it can't be that good, or it has to be good because of what I'm going to be doing here in the next 3 weeks too. So I think there's a lot to be said to just waking up every day and starting from scratch and approaching it as just today, how I need to nail things today, what are the basics I need to do to make today, and not just kind of rest on our training laurels, which I think we actually have a podcast about that.
I'm sure we do. Yesterday, I had my it was hour and 30 run yesterday on the schedule, and slept in, kind of noodled around for about a couple hours, took a nap, and the next thing I know, it was like afternoon, and it was getting later, and I was running out of sunshine, and I don't if you remember, like yesterday around 3 o'clock, but it was cold and rainy, and I'm like, Jesus. Because I think there was a window in there, but I missed it.
There was a small window, like a very small window.
And and I've been really good about not missing stuff, and I was like, geez, I got to go out, and I stepped outside, and it was, you can see your breath kind of, it was probably like mid-30s or something like that, mid to high. It wasn't that bad, but it was raining, and, I'd been cozy all day and everything, and I got out there, and I'm like, I got to get music for this one, but then I was like, nope, I'm not going to do it. And it was kind of weird. The last 2 times I've ran, actually, one was the other night. I waited all day because it was my second workout. I ran literally in a pouring rain at night, and then yesterday it was raining. And I've been kind of starting to embrace that. I think that's a lot of us are getting that Goggins fever thing, but I look for these opportunities to really, challenge myself or something, because it was cold and rainy, and it wasn't fun. And I didn't perform that well, and by the time I got done, I was actually kind of zapped. And the first thing I did is I went to Training Peaks to see what my workout was for today, and and like clockwork, you nailed it with a day off on me, which was very nice to see. But I like the struggle, because when I'm out there and things aren't going well, I like to have to figure it out a little bit, you know? Like, do I need to kind of just maybe walk this little section here, or slow down, just whatever it takes, because you can kind of find different pockets in those workouts, you know? If you slow it down and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, I'm starting to feel normal again, and then you kind of pick it up. And my point is, I think that you know, every workout doesn't have to be exactly what you think it might be out of the gate, or even during the workout, or, you know, of course, that's the sort of stuff I like to talk about, how it translates into races and how things can change. But for me, I look at those as opportunities. I like it when it's kind of crusty out, especially during runs. I'm not a big fan of that on bikes yet. I'm working on it, but
Yeah, well, I'm not sure many people are. But I mean, it's good to, and again, this is kind of I think something that we talked about maybe in last week's or the week before. But you know, you've got Triathlon Perfect Pat, who, if everything's not perfect, and the roads aren't perfect, the treadmill's not perfectly calibrated, the watch isn't fully charged, the weather's not great, the shoes aren't laced right, everything, it's all, everything goes to hell, and it ruins everything, or they just avoid it. You know, like, oh, it's cloudy, there's a 10% chance of rain. You know what? I think I'm just going to stick to inside today.
yeah.
But there's just a lot to be said and gained from putting yourself in different environmental factors. And again, I'm not talking about running in like a tornado or a hurricane or, you know, 6 inches of snow. But I do think there are many times, especially this time of year, basically this window between now until end of April, early May, when the weather is just all over the place. It could be 60, it could be 30, it could be, you know, 85 for our friends of us who live in a better part of the world, or it could be -10 in a blizzard. And then you get into April, and you've got spring, which is the biggest mess. And there's just, I think, a lot of opportunities where you need to look at yourself in the mirror and think, okay, what's the best decision for me as I know my strengths and weaknesses? Do I need to protect my psyche today and have a really, really good workout? Or is it going to be better for me in the long run that I go out and I actually produce a session where I execute it based on effort, but in more difficult conditions? The pace might not be what I want. The result might not be what I want. It might not meet my digital or data-driven expectations, but is putting myself in this environment that is going to challenge my toughness. It's going to challenge my effort in the face of, because I think one of the reasons people often cut things short or quit or take a different route is because they have this effort and result scale. If I put forth this amount of effort, I better see this result, and it has to even out. My effort must meet these watts. My effort must meet this pace. And if I'm trying super hard today and it doesn't meet my result, the result end of the scale, and it doesn't balance out, then I'm done.
Yeah, moving backwards.
And moving backwards, or it's just not worth it today. Even though there's like so much science out there that tells you that, and we've talked about this before, is in, you know, even the same effort or a little bit better, even a little bit slower, the adaptation is still occurring because you're not going to always be able to beat next week. But there's so much to be gained as well in choosing routes and areas and environmental factors and conditions that are more about pushing you and allowing you to grow. Because listen, guys, growth as an athlete isn't always about the numbers in Training Peaks or the numbers in Final Surge or the numbers on your spreadsheet. Growth as an athlete is also about what you learn about yourself intrinsically, about who you are and what you can handle and what you can push yourself and get through. And it's more oftentimes than not, it's those sessions when you go out in harsh conditions, or you choose a hilly route, or you're not feeling great, but you do it and you make it through and you learn something about yourself. It's always based on your effort and your will and your determination and your ability to not quit, not give in, and to still find a way to figure it out. you're more oftentimes like those attributes are the attributes that are going to allow you to perform and use your best fitness on race day, because your fitness, and this is like the story of like every professional sports always have athletes that have the greatest athletic ability, but when it just came time to perform in like crunch time, they just never had it. They had all the athletic ability in the world, all the talent in the world on the perfect day during the regular season, but when it came time to do the playoffs or anything else, they just couldn't produce.
Mm-hmm.
They just didn't have it. And I think also, yes, it's a mental toughness. Sure, is there other factors as well? But yes. But as a triathlete or as an endurance athlete, like you have to think that like there is such a thing, and we talk about this all the time, very frequently, especially about running, is you need to build your physical chassis in order to use the fitness engine that you're creating. An engine without a great chassis is useless. It's useless. The same goes for your mind. You have to create a very solid mental and emotional chassis. Because if you don't, then it's going to break. It's going to break at the first sign of a flat tire. I had an athlete this weekend who was competing at Geelong 70.3 in Australia, traveled like, I think it's like a 12-hour like time difference, something like crazy. And I was texting him in the map of the race. It was brutal hot compared to where he lives in the UK. And he had 3 flat tires. His first 2 he changed. His third one was a puncture. He had to wait for a spare tube. But he still managed. He didn't quit. Even though he wanted to, he didn't DNF. He saw it through, and he finished, and he ran the whole thing. That kind of a mental chassis, an emotional chassis, that strength, that mental and emotional durability and resiliency is not something that you conquer or that you adapt to or that you can formulate by always choosing the perfect day, mm-hmm. or always hopping on the treadmill, or always choosing to Zwift instead of getting your butt outside and getting a ride in, or I'm only going to swim if it's just me to one lane. So I'm going to wait 45 minutes for a lane where I can just have it by myself, or any other factor. And it's just there's just so many things that I think we can do that might seem unimportant or like you're making the best decision, that when you start to think about where things have gone wrong for you as an athlete in the past, it's always easy to blame fitness. It's always going to be the easiest thing to blame fitness or circumstance. It's getting down to like the real dead end of a result of was it just me mentally? Maybe I just didn't have it. And if I didn't have it, is that an area of my training or in my life that I'm totally neglecting?
Mm-hmm.
Because we're obsessed now with a world of perfect conditions. I can hop on my Peloton treadmill and never see the light of day. I'm going to end up paler than a white sheet. I don't ever have to go outside. I can just get on Zwift or on Trainer Road, and I can sit in the comfort and the confines of my perfectly decorated and installed pain cave. And I can just have I can have an endless pool in my garage if I want to. I can have everything in the perfect setup all the time. I don't really have to work that hard at all these other opportunities that I might have to go through. And I truly believe it's the athletes that are okay putting them. Now, again, this isn't something you need to do every day. I'm not advocating for total irresponsibility and, treat every day like a freaking Spartan race in the rain and the cold. But I am just saying is that you need to at least show yourself that you can. At least a couple times. Because if you can't, then you shouldn't expect yourself to deal very well with adverse conditions on race day. And I 100% totally believe that many people, and it's the last race that I know these conditions were there, or Ironman Florida was one, Louisville was one, hell, Chattanooga. There's always adverse conditions. Like the last 3 big races I can think of, Arizona was like perfect, but that we had athletes at Ironman Florida, total venue change of a race, and crazy hot weather and a storm. I'm sure plenty of people didn't even toe the start line because it didn't fall within their planning and their logistics, and so it had to be perfect. And then I'm sure a lot of people struggled with the weather. Then you fall back on an Ironman Louisville, as the website says, falls in the perfect time of year with perfect.
Yep.
Like, yeah, maybe you guys should take the time to edit that. Like totally cold, windy, freezing, shortened swim, many athletes, because that has such a high DNF rate, totally bailed before the day even started.
Mm-hmm.
Mentally. And then that led to an eventual DNF or them dropping out of the race on the bike or on the run. Chattanooga, canceled swim. Totally different race, hot as hell. I'm sure people... So, like, every single... Okay, listen, like, the days are long gone of signing up for the perfect race with the perfect conditions and the perfectly flat course. You're going to be in big, fat trouble if you're the athlete that signs up for this race, because traditionally it's had the perfect conditions. This course is made for a PR. The swim is downstream, the bike is pancake flat, the run is picturesque and also pancake flat, and then the year you get it's going to be like 105. With crazy winds. Mm-hmm. So if you're going into these races or you're signing up for these events based on the fact that you think they're going to be easy, then you better not have that same mentality throughout the course of the year that you just think, you know what, I don't need to test myself mentally. I don't need to test myself emotionally. I don't need to see how my body responds to crazy hard conditions because my race is going to be a piece of cake. You better get out there, you better practice, and you better show yourself that when you look in the mirror, you can handle it. Because if you don't, the next time you take a glimpse, you're going to want to bail.
I talked to a lot of people after Louisville, and the first thing I say is, well, at least you've got that under your belt. There's something really powerful about going through that. It's like the odds of getting on a bike and riding an Ironman bike in those types of conditions, worse than that, are pretty low. And you talk about this stuff all the time. Is like you have to be able to adapt and adjust and to the conditions of racing. And we may have perfect ideals in our mind or whatever, but then you show up and it is something like 95 at Chattanooga or freezing cold at Louisville or whatever, and that's going to change things dramatically. And how can you handle that change? I think that's the key element of all this. Is like, okay, if you haven't ever been through that and you still think that you can do what you think you could do, you're going to be in a world of hurt mentally, because you're going to be watching your watch just fade away, and the temperatures and the winds and all these types of things, you have to be able to accept the fact that you're not going to have your perfect race, quote unquote, but it can still be perfect within the elements. And I don't know, we've talked about it a couple times, but my first ever really Olympic was the one I drove over to Knoxville with you, and I don't want to belabor this because it's sort of my benchmark for...
You hang your hat on it, man.
I do, man. But
listen, man, if you did that race, you hang your hat on it. It's kind of like, it's no Lake Tahoe Ironman, but it's pretty close.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's certainly a good example too. But it's like, I hear you. I just remember, for me, it was, you kind of uncertain. We went for a practice swim the day before, and it was like 55-degree water or something like that. I mean, it literally stunned me to swim up and down on that course, and then I laid in bed, and we shared a room that night, and I was just laying there the whole night, just looking at the ceiling, going, "Can I really do this?" I was just like, the mental baggage that thing put on me before the race even started was incredible. But then the next day, somehow I got in, and a lot of people didn't start that one either, and it rained all day, and the temperature was 55 degrees all day, and it was raining all day.
It was absolutely freezing.
Yeah, it was a miserable.
Yeah, it was. I had an umbrella, and I was in my warmest, like full on parka North Face jacket, and I was still freezing cold.
Yeah, but the point is once I got done with that race, I knew that, like, I hadn't done a half or a full yet, and there was something in me that was like, I know that was only an Olympic, but to get through that, if I know I can get through that right there, that really gave me a bump. It's sort of like, I think people may have gotten a little bit of that coming out of our run camp this last weekend, where certain people probably came into that weren't used to running hills or trails or any of that business in mud, some muddy conditions, and they got through it and had way more elevation than they're usually running. And they had to walk away with that with sort of a momentum or a confidence in their mind. And that's a huge part of it, is just believing and understanding that, like, it's okay to run a little bit slower in bad conditions or tough conditions.
It's those events in your life that adjust your mental and emotional governor. I think we're all, like, based on, like, our life and our experiences and trauma or no trauma and races and hard races and easy races, whatever it is, it all like auto adjusts your mental and emotional governor. So, governor for a car, like, it shuts off when you reach a certain speed. And I think some athletes who, depending on what's going on or what they put themselves through or what's happened to them, like, have a natural governor click off of like 50 miles an hour. So, things don't happen too fast. Things don't happen, like, really on a huge scale before they're like, time to shut it off. But the more I think you allow yourself these opportunities to put yourself in situations and conditions and surroundings that challenge yourself, that goes up. It can go from 50 to 60 to 70, 80 miles an hour. And while I'm obviously using an analogy of miles per hour, it for you internally, it might be pain. It might be your ability to handle stress. It might be your ability to handle heat. It might be your ability to handle cold or wind or adversity, whatever it is. As long as you can continue to challenge yourself and raise that internal governor that tells you it's time to stop or it's time to quit or you don't have it, it just cuts off. And things like run games, I had athletes as well that mentioned they're like, I can already feel the benefit. I'm like, first of all, as much as I would love to be that coach that was like, yeah, it was totally the run camp. You're obviously already seeing some major fitness gains. Yeah. You're seeing fitness gains. Yes. But it's so much a chin up thing. You pushed yourself harder. So now your ability to push yourself at X level has now been raised to a Z. So your normal kind of effort level seems easier when it's actually the same, if not a little bit more. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So it's the same thing as like dropping it's like, we always talk about the name of the game is to take your 9-minute running pace and have your heart rate lower each time you do it, or, over time. Or the greatest thing is to have your pace drop and your heart rate drop. That's ultimate fitness. The same thing can go with how you deal with things inside your mind and in adversity and obstacles is once you've gone through so many things, like other things, you just don't give a shit. You're like, that's like nothing. Like, this is absolutely nothing. I don't even know, like, why you're stressed about this. Well, maybe the other person is stressed because their mental emotional governor is totally different than yours. Because we all know those people who get stressed out over like 2 people in front of them at the grocery line. Like, it's just like, I got to get to so-and-so sometime. This is going to freak me out. I can't believe this person's taking it. I'm like, dude, calm the hell down.
Yeah.
First of all. But it's all about it. Again, it's about exposure. And I think that's ultimately like the word is
Yeah.
What are you willing to expose yourself to? And again, some people have exposed themselves to things unwillingly, and that's formulated in their mind. And sometimes you have to remind them of that if we don't, and again, like, you don't want to do it all the time, just like if you've been exposed to any kind of traumatic event. And I deal with a lot of athletes who have had very, very difficult traumatic events, and obviously you don't want them to be reminded of it or to have to go through it again.
Mm-hmm.
But you do need to, I do like to encourage them to remember, listen, you made it through X, Y, and Z. You can do this. This should be nothing on a scale of can I. It should be more of a how can I?
Right.
And then figure it out and remind yourself that you're actually capable of doing and overcoming incredible obstacles.
Yeah. Did you watch the NBA All-Star game last night?
No, I was watching the Bronx Zoo on Animal Planet.
The Bronx Zoo about the Yankees?
No, on Animal Planet. I do have to say a quick promo for them. It is an outstanding show.
Okay. The Bronx Zoo.
Yeah, it's like behind the scenes of what really goes on at the zoo and like the animals and how it's awesome. Anyway.
Oh, the Bronx Zoo is a book written by shoot.
Oh, we go back to baseball.
But it was a Yankee. Yeah, they called it what year the Yankees won it all, they called it the Bronx Zoo. But anyway,
no, I did not watch a single second of anything NBA.
Well, I wanted to bring it up because there's, you see, like, some of these guys are out there, they're like 19 years old playing in the NBA All-Star game. And there's always this thing about how can these kids come out of high school and go to the NBA? I mean, you don't really see that in other sports, and you're kind of like, how do they get there? I mean, why in basketball? But my theory on that is that they are 12 years old. They're going to the local park or down to the playground or whatever, and they're playing against guys that are like 20 years old. They grow up playing against tougher competition in really tough environments and things like that, and they just get to the point where their emotional governor can handle anything. That like they're exposed to so many things before they even get to be 16 that like getting out in front of a huge crowd and things like that are nothing, because they've already faced proportionally a very difficult experience in their childhood, like continually. But you can't do that in like football and baseball, right? You can't just simulate games down at the playground to play against older guys and tackle football. I mean, that kind of stuff doesn't happen. So these basketball players are always preparing themselves in a legitimate way, 5-on-5 games down at the whatever, and they just get tougher and explosive. I've always been fascinated by that, but I think there's something in there with what we do. It's like, what do we expose ourselves to, and how can we make our minds tougher, and so that it's the old adage about practice harder than you play kind of thing. And if you experience difficult training conditions, or if you seek out challenging things in training, maybe that's going out once in a while with people that are faster than you or whatever, just to experience that, then come race day, if you do get perfect conditions, then it's going to seem a lot easier. Or if it's bad conditions, then you'll be prepared and be used to it, and you'll be able to handle it. It is definitely about experiences and putting yourself through it. I think that, like, I don't know, I know you run on treadmills. Do you still run on it quite a bit? I don't know how anybody can run on a treadmill, to be honest. I mean, maybe that's a tough trainer. Maybe that's a reverse. Maybe that's what I need to do, because I hate it so bad.
I mean, there's might be like 3 days out of the year where you and I would absolutely have to run on the treadmill if we were going to run, because of it being like too cold, or it just poured down rain all day and you're going to like get sick more than likely if you go running it. It's an easy. Listen, is it better than not doing it? Sure, absolutely, 100%. But I think also people fall into the trap of thinking that it's the same. I just think that I do run on it maybe 2-3 times a week for super easy runs, but it's all about, you got to get outside, and to the suffering part of it. I mean, gosh, I had some athletes this weekend who spent an hour and 45 minutes, hour and 15 minutes on the treadmill, because it was one was like 6 inches of snow. So, those kind of, depending on what kind of phase you're in, you do have to advocate towards executing the workout over, in running like a mid 7-minute mile like this athlete was versus going out and risking falling in the snow when you're 6 weeks out from your race. So you do have to, and not getting the adaptation that you want. So you do have to advocate on certain times, like, is this a good idea or is this a bad idea? And I'll tell them, hey, coach, it's a good idea, but let's hit the treadmill today. Let's nail this. Or, sack up and get outside. Like, go do your job. There's a time and a place for it. But you have athletes who avoid environments or temperatures or factors that might compromise their scale, that they won't be able to see. And most of the time, it all just boils down to how fragile is your psyche. How fragile is your psyche? Do you have to see that number to allow yourself to sleep at night that you're actually improving, or that you met your? Because listen, we all know of like a boatload of athletes who only ride flat, who will only ride in a group, who will only hammer it out on their training, and it has to be flat because they have to get done. They have to hit at least 19 miles an hour on their group ride. It has to be 20 miles an hour. And then they put them on a hilly course and they absolutely get throttled. You can get by with not putting yourself in difficult situations, but you're never going to thrive on race day when reality and life and the fact that you're not in control rears its head. Because think about like how we go from controlling every aspect of our training. A lot of athletes do. I got to have my own lane when I swim. If I even have to wait for 20 minutes, I'm done. I'll just move it to Friday. You got your perfect bike set up on the trainer with your Swift and the perfect route, and your power meter's got to be working, the battery's right, and then everything's got to be good to go, and it's got to be right on. Then I have the perfect power numbers, got to hit 220 for 6 minutes, then 2 minutes of recovery at 130 with RPMs at 90, and RPMs at 85, and building up slowly, gradually. I got to see a perfect graph. And then I go for a run, I got to see a perfect pace, and this thing is running all the time, and I usually hit 830, so I got to hit 830s. If I don't hit 830s, something's probably wrong. Maybe I'm getting sick, maybe I'm getting injured. I'm just not getting fast enough. I got to have 830s. Everything we do is based on how we think and how we feel we can control our actual improvement, or convincing our psyche that what we're doing is worth it and we're getting what we need to do back, and our emotional investment, our emotional and mental return on investment is validated, and I'm doing it. And then you get up on race day and you ain't got nothing. You wake up, you're in a strange place, you're in a hotel you didn't make. Food, you may have brought it, but it's not going to be, it may or may not what you usually eat. The swim, guess what? It ain't up to you. You don't get to predict the temperature. You don't get to choose whether it's wetsuit legal or not. You don't get to choose if it's canceled or not. So you get in, you go swim, and guess what? You ain't swimming alone, buddy. You got 3,000 other people who couldn't give less of a crap if they swim over top of you and drown you and they don't find you to the end of the race. Then you go through transition. Nobody cares about your bike or your stuff on the ground. They will drag your wetsuit over to 6 racks farther, and they will not go put it back. So you better be ready to find it. You get on your bike, you hit on the road, and guess what? You don't even know. Again, you got 2,000 other athletes that are out there with you. You got aid stations, you got volunteers, you got stuff on the road where you may get a flat tire or people are swerving. You got a route that you've probably maybe just driven in your car, which isn't even honestly close to actually riding on your bike. And then you got to do the whole thing. You can't control the temperature. You can't control the wind. You don't know what's going to happen, so you got to do that. Then you got to come back into T2. Oh, my God, where are my run shoes? I can't find them. That's happened to so many people. They can't find, like, their run shoes, or somebody took their wrong bag. Not in control of that. Hop in the transition tent, doing your thing, make sure you got yourself run out. Oh, my God, now all of a sudden it's like 102 degrees. I didn't have control over that. Can't hop on the treadmill. Guess I better have to go do this. Maybe I didn't fuel correctly on the bikes. So now what am I going to do? It's all troubleshooting. Like, it's all troubleshooting. And when you train, it's like people want to live on top of a help desk. Like, things got to be perfect all the time, and I can't figure it out. And you just have to be willing to, every once in a while, again, we're not advocating, or I'm not advocating, towards, like, putting yourself in, like, these insane circumstances every day, because that's not smart either. But don't avoid challenges and exposure like the plague, just to protect your psyche that's driven and validated and fueled by analyzation of data and how it corresponds to your effort. Because I know more athletes than not that will tell you that their best race wasn't even their fastest. It's the one they were most proud of because of the effort that it took for them to finish. Yet we approach training in a totally opposite way. And again, performance is important. Fitness is important. All these things are important. But I'm just saying that on the grand scope of training and preparing to race and preparing for a season and preparing for specific, this is one of the very first conversations you and I ever had. We were talking about, how are you preparing for Muncie versus how are we preparing for Ironman Wisconsin? Two totally different courses. Couldn't be any further from the opposite. There's more elevation in the swim at Wisconsin than there is in the whole Muncie bike course. And you're like, so what are we going to do? And it's like, listen, we're always going to be training for Wisconsin. Always. It's always going to be either the front of our mind or the back of our mind. But it's always going to be on mind. So all of the big gear work that we're doing, even though everyone should do big gear work, it's to prepare your body and your legs to withstand the strength and the torque and the to absorb those punches that you're going to have to be able to absorb. Louisville, Wisconsin, Lake Placid. If you don't do strength work on the bike, you're going to shrivel up like a noodle. You have to be able to prepare your body specifically. So while doing your stuff on the trainer and doing bigger work is important, or getting on the road and choosing a super flat course, that might get you great fitness, but you have to be able to take it that extra mile or that extra step to really focus on the specific nature and the specific needs of the demands of the day. What's the most likely demands of the day? From the time you wake up, from the time you cross the finish line, what is more than likely going to be demanded of me today? Now, am I saying that if every race is predicted to be in the 50s, you do like heat training just to prepare? No, I'm not saying that either. But I'm saying if you know the race could be hot or could be windy and it does have hills, then you sure as hell bet you better be working on strength and big gear work on the bike and getting yourself body and heat acclimated. There's just, again, you can make it 80% of the way, but to truly find that next 20%, which is the hardest, you're going to have to really focus and really put yourself in situations where you're either being uncomfortable and you're causing additional exposure, or you're going to have to spend extra time and details on the small things that add up huge on race day to be ultimately prepared. Not to just participate, but to perform.
You know how I talk about race energy a lot, and how I sort of depend on it? I have historically. I'm not saying it's the right answer, but I've always kind of, I guess, counted on the idea that when I get to a race and my adrenaline's going to be flowing a little higher, and that's going to carry a lot of things. But it just dawned on me that, we're talking about exposing yourself to a lot of different situations or whatever, but how race energy probably ruins a lot of people's races. And it's because they haven't figured out how to pull it back. I mean, it's one of those things where you get out and you get off the bike and you're on the run and you're like 2 to 3 miles in and you're kind of running with people that don't look like they're running hard, or you just feel like, hey man, I'm cruising. What the hell's going on? Well, you're probably ruining your race, because you haven't been able to. It's sort of like once that cannon shoots and you get in the water, you have to stay within yourself. And within 10 strokes, you could have gotten hit in the face, and the next thing you know, you're thinking about that the whole day or whatever, or trying to keep up with people around you who you have no idea how fast the swimmers they are, or how fast the cyclists they are, or runners or whatever. And the next thing you know, you're running with these people, and you're running way out of your zone, and then you just put yourself in the big hole. stuff like that. I always think that that's such a massive thing to think about, because race energy is definitely going to push you fast. And that's the other thing, is like you go out and you might, train and you're comfortable in a 9 minute pace, and on race day, that could, if you control it, that 9 minute pace that's comfortable during training could, be 8:45 if you do it right, because that's what's going to happen. That's what races do, or they can do for you. But they can also make that 9 minute pace a 10 minute pace if you're going too fast. And there's something to be said about, that's the mental game for me, is like, how do you control that energy and balance that adrenaline in your body?
It's the yin and the yang. It's like the total two ends of the spectrum, and you fall into this category too. Is you like this the same? There's usually three different kinds of people. But the person we just talked about for a while is obviously the person who never allows himself any kind of exposure that might create an obstacle towards always showing or feeling or being the best. Then you have other athletes, and you fall into this category, who a lot of times mentally during training or during decisions in training fall back onto, yeah, but I've always been able to get it done. I can suffer with the best of them. I can, if it's the more, and you've always told us to me, and we've always agreed too, is that the worse the conditions, the better. Mm-hmm. Because you'll be able to tough it out or stick it out when maybe Perfect Pat won't be able to. But what happens when those worlds collide? And maybe it's one day where the person who I can always suffer, maybe you wake up one day and you just don't have it and you just can't suffer. Well, now you're behind the 8 ball. But then what if you could, and I think that's the point of this conversation is, and where I'm trying to go with this is, what if you could mold those two together, where you've got, because I think the ability to suffer and the ability to have that like intrinsic shovel that you can just dig as deep as you need to and get as uncomfortable as you need to. What if you can blend that with also taking an approach to training that is maximizing the ability, so you might not have to go there, or if you do, at least you can, but you've got to, because eventually sometimes it's just going to even out. You might have Perfect Pat racing against Obstacle Oliver, and Perfect Pat does all his training perfectly, and he trains 15, 16, 17 hours a week, and he nails it, and his fitness is outstanding. And he's racing against Obstacle Oliver, and he might do 7, 8 hours a week in training, and he's like, yeah, I don't really need to do these longer runs. I don't really need to do these longer rides, because I've always kind of gotten by in the past, and if it gets really, really, really hard, I can make it. Like, I know I can make it. I've done it before. I've finished these races. I can make it. And so you put them together into a race, and the challenges are totally different, but they're also the same. And they could come in within like a couple minutes of each other. When the race has been somewhat difficult, but not perfect, but not also like, raining cats and dogs and crazy wind and cold and a rough swim. They might come in like 5 minutes apart. But that either one of them really execute the best day they could have if they had of kind of been like Jekyll and Hyde. One day they're Perfect Pat, one day they're Obstacle Oliver. Like blending those two together to become the most well-prepared, well-conditioned, mentally, emotionally, physically prepared athlete they can for any race day. And that, I think, is the ultimate goal of every athlete, is to be totally prepared instead of always ultimately leaning in one way or the other.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And Patient Pete.
Mm-hmm. Patient Pete. I love Patient Pete. He's a friend of mine.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. I totally resonate with that. The idea that, I know, it's sort of like resting on your laurels, or knowing, you never, in my case, that would be never I don't know, never sticking with it long enough to raise my game outside of the idea that I know what I can do already or something like that. But I guess they're both challenges in a way. It's like race day challenges and training challenges can be a lot different mentally. It's like I know when the lights go. I was so nervous about my first Ironman, and then I told you that one time, is like I woke up that morning and I was 100% at peace. It was like game day, lights on, music playing, everybody jacked up, and that's where I wanted to be. And I had that, I don't know, I guess it was maybe just because I did play a lot of sports growing up or whatever. Game day you definitely have to work at being able to gear it back on game day. It's sort of like, the difference between and it's a sport. It's not football, where you kind of get that impression that the coaches are trying to just jack people up as high as they can be, so they're coming out of the gate firing. And you got substitutes and other players that can go in if you get tired or whatever. But Ironman, you have to be level. In triathlon, you have to be level out of the gate. You got to be able to start slow and pick that thing up over time. And that's the whole goal. But if you come out of there too hot and your heart rate going way out of the box, and that's what I mean by race day energy. It's like, how do you work on controlling that? And then in my case, how can I work on controlling or pumping up training day energy a little bit?
It's a lot of factors.
It's not easy being Obstacle Oliver.
It's not. It's not easy, man. Or Patient Pete. I mean, it's just like, But again, it's like it's not. It's resisting the urge to identify solely with one, which is one of the massive struggles for, I think, people in general or athletes, is to not solely identify only as. It's to be open to exploring different possibilities, different sports, different loves, different, avenues for growth, and what's going to end up ultimately making you a better person. Because, PSA, we do this shit for fun. It is a hobby. You don't get paid. You spend thousands of dollars a year to do this. For what? To label yourself? To feel like you have to be or only be or train this only way, this kind of thing. Like, dude, have some freedom. Do what you want. Be who you want, but remind yourself that if this isn't giving you a better path to be a better person or to gain different attributes or to refine different skills, or it's not adding value to the rest of your life, then it's a negative. It might not even be a break even. It's a negative.
Mm-hmm.
And there's just so much, I think, in every aspect. And I know I had so much good feedback from our last podcast. And those are some of my favorite podcasts to do. And it might seem like totally against the grain, and it probably is for a triathlon coach with a podcast to advocate for not doing a triathlon. It's like, I had so many, I got so many emails, and then I even had 2 athletes that were like, dude, you're so right. Thank you. I just need to focus on this one event for this year that's swim only related. Or, you're totally right. Even though I signed up for it, doesn't mean that if I don't do it, they're going to throw me in prison or kick me out of the triathlon fun gang. Like, this is for you. Do things for you that are going to add value or to add personal growth. That's the focus. Like, that's the journey. Like, be responsible and own that. Just don't label yourself a triathlete only, and if you don't, then, oh my God, what will I have in this world? I will have nothing. If triathlon is the only thing you have in life, then it's time to make an addition. And so I think ultimately it's about the courage and also the humility to continue to venture on like this journey of self-exploration to where we're just trying to continue to figure things out. And if we're trying to always make things perfect, what are we even figuring out? Because it's always the same. You're just continuing to control the same environment and the same atmosphere that's kept you doing the same thing all the time. Change and pain, all those kind of, and circumstance and events that are obstacles, those are what make you who you are. It's not all the things you easily controlled to allow yourself the perfect this, the perfect that. Like, rarely has a memory ever been made that you controlled every aspect of it, and because you won't remember it because it just met expectation. It didn't exceed it because you didn't have any, or it wasn't in some incredible event or experience that you were a part of that wasn't planned, that just allowed it to happen. And that's so much of what sport and training and skill acquisition is finding out what you love and pushing yourself in different directions and reminding yourself that it's okay to challenge ourselves, and it's okay to not grade ourselves on a scale of 1 to 10 or watts to pace. It's, did we try hard? Did it feel good? Did I give my effort? And what did I learn today? And was it positive? And if you can take all things and you can wrap them into as many training days or training cycles or as many races as you can, then I feel like you're going to end up on top at some point. Because on most of my year-end chats, basically with anyone, what they learned from the year has nothing to do with power, pace, or swim. It's, I learned so much about myself this year, about how hard I can work, about the amount of obstacles I can overcome, that how if I really, really want something, I can do it, how to stay motivated, how to be a good example to my kids. Like, that's all the stuff that people come to terms with at the end of the year. It's not that, hey, coach, remember that March 13th Tuesday? You remember when I ran that 7:30 pace? Stuck with me, man. That was my year right there. Nailed it. Love it. I mean, I made a poster about it. It's on my wall. March 13th, 7:30 pace. That's my year, coach. 2018 summed up. It's never happened. Never will happen. And if it does, it means I'm doing a shitty job as a coach. It should be pictures with your kids, pictures with your family, just stuff that you can remember, and that's a small little tirade, but I think it was worth it.
It's a good place to stop here, man.
Yeah, I know I'm in the zone talking when I start to do my hand motions, because I'm in a room, I'm in a house that's totally nobody's here. Plus, I'm moving, so there's like barely anything in our house right now. It's like if I had it decorated, this is what our house would look like. It's got like no picture frames, no curtains, a lamp over here, TV, a couple actual plates, lots of paper plates, and that's about it. It's like if I were to design our house, this is what it would look like, and it's embarrassing.
Simplicity and minimalism. I thought we might talk about that today because I've seen a lot of articles on it lately, sent to me, posted, whatever. But we also neglected to talk about what I thought you were going to talk about, which is pizza.
Oh, totally forgot about that. Hey, listen, we live day to day. I wasn't living on last night's Facebook post.
But so many people want.
Man, I posted last night on our closed Crushing Iron Facebook page that we were going to cover one of the most controversial topics in all of endurance sports, which I know within our own team is a very contentious subject. And it's, do you like or should you even allow pineapple on your pizza? We actually we do team intros for every athlete on the team, and they get their day on Facebook, and we learn all about them. And the one thing they will never forget to add is sometimes they don't even tell us if they have kids or not, but they will tell you if they're team pineapple or team no pineapple. But really, it's team pineapple and team pizza, because pineapple on a pizza isn't a pizza at all.
You're not in, huh?
I'm not in. Not even close to in.
Oh, I'm like, if there's a pizza there and it has pineapple, I'll eat it. I don't order it, but I just like pizza so much that I don't care.
Pineapple. It's all show. It's all decoration. It provides nothing. If you want something sweet, go get a candy bar. If you want something salty and sweet, take a pretzel and dip it in some peanut butter.
I don't know. Life is all about the sweet-salt balance, man. If we haven't figured that out, what do we
There's
know?
a reason that when you go to like a really good pizza buffet, there's maybe like one offering with pineapple on it.
Yeah, you're probably right about that.
It's because they have to. Because they'll have like that one really, really high maintenance person that's like, well, where's my pineapple on the pizza? Why don't you have that? And they're like, fine, here's a 2-day-old.
It's the one all crusty and
Exactly. There's like a 2-day-old pizza that we couldn't sell on Friday night because the kids are too busy playing arcade games. Let's toss a little bit of the Dole's pineapple on it and give them their way. And then then it's probably like the person ends up blogging about their pizza experience at Mr. Gaddy's. I mean, give me a break with the pineapple on the pizza. But the emails roll in, baby. C26coach@gmail.com. Try and convince me that pineapple is a worthy ingredient or topping on what should be an outstanding pizza.
All right, I'm crushingiron@gmail.com. I am Mike. If you want to email me about anything, go for it.
Yeah, just me about pizza. I don't care about anything else right now.
Or swim analysis.
I will tell you that there's been a huge influx in swim analysis the last 3 weeks. So kudos to you people who are choosing to get better this time of year and find a way to improve and not settling for, sucky swimming Sammy.
Sucky swimming Sammy.
Waiting next time. Thank you. We'll see you again Thursday. Crushing Iron Triathlon podcast. If you want any more info on the other things that we do and the other podcasts that we have that are probably a lot better than the one you listened to today, you can go to crushingiron.com.
There you go. 243 in the books. Thanks for joining me, Coach.
Pineapple does not belong on pizza. I'm out.
See ya.